Keir Starmer has U-turned again, this time in relation to the euphemistically called Grooming Gangs scandal. And he has agreed that a national inquiry should take place, which is really good news. What is not good is to witness the unedifying spectacle of the Labour Party grandees scrabbling around, trying to reach that moral high ground. Well, you may find that it's a pretty slippery slope. I don't think you're going to get there, but the good news is it's not crowded up there anyway. The Tories and other people in positions of power and influence over the last few years have behaved appallingly. It is literally a national scandal. Let's just watch a snippet from a GB News interview.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
When you said to me in January in that hospital, you said that it's a far right bandwagon if you're calling for national inquiry. I know you're talking about politicians, but a lot of GB News viewers and listeners were also concerned, and they felt you were calling them far right. Would you perhaps regret that remark?
I said expressly politicians, and I mean politicians, and I was expressly calling out politicians who had been in office and done nothing, and it was them that I was criticising.
So this whole far-right bandwagon thing that he talks about, it's never been defined. We don't know what it means, and he's being really slippery here because he's saying, oh yeah, that was about the politicians. Keir, you're a lawyer. You understand the importance of language. I've said it before. Yes, you may have said politicians, and I'm speaking, specifically about politicians. You were talking about the politicians who jumped on the far-right bandwagon. You're not saying that they created this far-right bandwagon. They jumped on it. It was already there. It's a bandwagon that is far-right. What does he mean by far-right? The politicians were jumping on essentially what the public opinion, the majority of the public opinion was. You're playing with words, my friend. This is nonsense. So you're basically saying that people who wanted to have this national inquiry are far right, and that the politicians were just going along with a far right bandwagon. Let's look a little bit more closely at Keir and his words in terms of far right. So this is from a BBC article. Speaking on a visit to Paris, the Prime Minister said the best way to deal with the snake oil of populism and nationalism was through delivery and showing there are progressive democratic answers to the many challenges we face is the way forward. I'm not sure that's the best English, but never mind. The snake oil of populism and nationalism. Just think about what he said there for a second. The snake oil of populism. Now, I've explained this before, Keir. Populism is not necessarily a bad thing. Populism means, or one version of it, one meaning, is that you listen to what people are saying, their concerns. Why wouldn't you? You're there to serve. And you attempt to do something about it. You may listen and say, hey, I hear what you're saying. If you elect me, I will do this, 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 and this. And if there's a fair effort to, once elected, to carry out those promises, then that's not a bad way to be. So populism in of itself isn't bad. Demagoguery, again, I've talked about this before, is where devious means are used to get the vote, saying whatever you think the public want to hear, to get in power, to look like a sheep whilst you are a wolf, and no offence to wolves there. And demagoguery is Machiavellian. So what are you talking about here? Because I think if it's populism, it's not a bad thing. But you seem to think it's an issue. So I'm not quite sure what you believe that leadership is about. And then we have the snake oil of nationalism. What is wrong with nationalism? A pride in the country, the culture, the history, the ceremony, the pomp. What is wrong with nationalism? What do you mean by nationalism? Why do you keep on saying that? You see, I have a fear that what you're talking about is the need to be overseen by technocracy, faceless, unelected bureaucrats, that we should go, oh, well, you're some kind of expert, we should listen. And it's not that I don't like expertise and experts. I do, I really do. But I also believe that people need to be led by leaders who are moral, ethical, compassionate and kind. And there is a danger when you have a technocracy mindset that you miss out on the humanity, you miss out on that stuff, and you think it's all to do with facts and figures. It is to do with that to a degree, but it's also joy. It's also love. It's also, as I've mentioned, kindness. It is also hope. And how is that created? It's created by, in part, families, connection, friends, and a wider cultural experience. So there's nothing wrong with nationalism. Let's listen to Rachel Reeves.
Keir Starmer changed his mind about the fact that...
Well, I think Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has always been really focused, as he was when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, on the victims, and not grandstanding, but actually doing the practical things to ensure that something like this never happens again, but also to ensure that the victims of this horrific abuse over many, many years is got to grips with, and that people have answers.
There we have it. Keir doing practical things. A practical thing would have been to understand what people were shouting about months ago. Again, this technocratic approach that Keir appears to have, just waiting on someone to tell him from a statute or a ruling. Come on, Keir. You don't need that. There was enough evidence around. There were credible people saying, you need to do this. This is what a leader would do. This is what a leader would do if they were connected emotionally to the population, connected emotionally to the job of leading. And I appreciate it is important to remain level-headed, but this was a chance. This was an opportunity for you to show that you actually cared, for you to show that you understood what leadership was about. It is not always by rote. It is not always taking tiny little steps and waiting until you get all the ducks in a row. Sometimes you've got to look around, trust your intuition, trust your instinct, trust what people are saying, trust the population, trust that the majority of people were saying the same thing and they're not bad people. The country is populated in terms of the majority, at least, by exceptionally good, moral, decent, ethical people. You need to listen to them. You should have listened to them. And from Talk TV, I'm going to play you this little, series of snippets that they've put together.
No, the reason we're not doing another national inquiry is because there's already been a national inquiry.
Do you want an inquiry or not?
No, Paul, I'm trying to answer your question, and the answer is no. We don't think another inquiry, after all the many inquiries that we've put victims through, is the way to tackle this.
There has been a huge amount of misinformation this week. Sadly, party political misinformation. It is just wrong.
Trevor, what is the most important thing
here?
Of course,
it's the position of the victims.
I understand that. It is the victims, and it's not people's hurt feelings about how they've been spoken.
However, I think that what I will not let happen is for the far right to use the exploitation of vulnerable girls in this country and what happened in Cologne for their own ends when they've done absolutely nothing about sexual violence and the culture of sexual assault.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over this.
We want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out.
Labour, you should be totally ashamed of yourself.
Hands. Are we the baddies?